How's it going, Star Seekers? Welcome back to the channel. My name's Luke, and today I'm bringing you a review for a game called Monument. Styled after the Quake-like shooters of yesteryear, Monument is a fast-paced first-person shooter which tests both your skills and your patience as you blast your way through levels filled with these, and whatever these things are. If you're a fan of the mid-90s shooters, then Monument might be right up your alley. So let's jump right on into this review and see what the game has to offer. And don't forget to hit that like button if this video helps you out, and subscribe to the channel to be notified of future reviews. So back in the day I played quite a lot of these kinds of games, which included popular titles like Quake, Unreal and Return to Castle Wolfenstein, and in comparison to the more tactical based shooters of today, the pace of these games was much quicker, and many of them came to be known as twitch shooters due to the fast and accurate reflexes required to be good at them. Taking its influence from these kind of games, Monument aims to bring back a little bit of the fast-paced run-and-gun action with its gameplay, and the game originally released on PC sometime back in early 2015. Monument then saw a complete overhaul of its visuals and some of its gameplay elements at the start of this year, and it's now been ported to the Switch, where it's available for £5.39 on the UK eShop and $7 on the US eShop. Now, once more following the suit of its ancestors, Monument doesn't really have any kind of storyline or plot to set the scene for you, and you're instead just thrust straight into its first level, after selecting a difficulty of course. For this review I played on normal difficulty, and I have to say it was still quite tough, so if you're new to these kind of shooters, then you might want to take it easy to start with. So the controls in the game are more or less your standard first-person shooter controls, but unlike most modern shooters, there ain't no aiming down sights in this game, and it's all about moving fast and shooting from the hip. Alongside the standard controls, you can also invert your aiming, and the game also features gyro aiming, though I've never been able to get the hang of this. So if you've played something like classic Doom, levels in Monument follow suit, and the objective in each level is to simply fight your way through hordes of enemies to reach the end point, after which it's on to the next level. Each level contains a number of coloured doors which bar the way to the exit, and so you need to track down the matching keycards in order to proceed through them, and there are also a few secret areas to find in levels containing a few bonus pickups. Now the levels themselves are all quite varied, and I thought the actual design of them wasn't too bad, but unfortunately there is no map in the game, and the last couple of levels are quite large, so you need to have a decent memory to avoid getting lost. I also encountered a few sections in levels where it was ridiculously dark, but again the game has no brightness settings, and I did end up getting stuck in this tunnel at one point and had to actually use the light from my pistol shots to find my way out. Now you begin the first level of the game with nothing but your pistol, but before long you'll amass an arsenal which includes a shotgun, machine gun and a couple of other weapons, and you can quickly cycle through them with the L and R buttons or the D-pad. When it comes to the FPS gameplay, things are kept very simple in Monument, and you're generally going to be using your pistol and shotgun on smaller enemies to conserve ammo, and then switching out to your more powerful weapons to take down the trickier enemies. Fortunately, ammo conservation doesn't prove to be too much of an issue though, as you'll find ammo pickups for your weapons are plentiful. Alongside health and armour pickups, you'll find them dotted all over the shop, but if you do happen to be running low, there are also these kiosks where you can swap out a bit of health for ammo, though I advise using these sparingly. Now overall the weapons in Monument aren't too bad. There's a decent balance between range and raw firepower, though admittedly they are all rather generic and are nowhere near as exotic as those found in other shooters. The overhaul of Monument also added the teleport gun to the game, with several levels requiring you to use it to get around the place, but to be quite honest, I really wasn't a fan of it. The reason for this was that it can only hold one round, and after firing it, you then need to find an ammo spot to reload it, which led to me having to backtrack several times, and overall I just don't think it added a lot to the game. Now, so far as the game's enemies go, there really isn't a huge amount of variety to them, with there being around 6 or 7 enemies in total, with a couple of new enemies added each level. The lineup of enemies consists of things like these big hulking bastards who charge at you, ranged enemies who fire torrents of fireballs at you, and these incredibly annoying enemies who keep teleporting around you. Generally, they aren't too challenging to take down though, and they're not major bullet sponges like some enemies tend to be, but where the real challenge comes into play, and where my first major criticism of Monument lies, is the way in which the enemies spawn. Now usually in the majority of FPS games you'll have rooms filled with enemies, and you might get the odd enemy that jumps out at you or teleports in when you pick up a certain object. In Monument, however, every single enemy is set to spawn when you hit a specific trigger point in a map or you pick up something like a keycard. Now after a while this does become very predictable and repetitive, and they lose any sort of surprise factor usually associated with these encounters, but the main issue is that all too often, enemies just spawn right next to you or behind you, and to me this just kind of felt a little cheap at times. Another issue, which kinda goes in hand with the random enemy spawning, is the game's autosave system, which can really be a pain in the arse. You're able to perform manual quick saves by hitting the minus button on the controller, but the autosaves overwrite these, and several times the game autosaved when I had nearly no health, and there's not actually a way to turn it off. Now so far as playtime goes, Monument is a pretty short game, and I was able to complete it on normal mode in about an hour. I think there were around 5 or so levels and one final level containing the game's one and only boss fight, and while the game only costs around a £5 in the UK, some people may still consider it to be a little overpriced, especially considering you can pick up the Steam version of the game for under £2. Overall though, I didn't think Monument was a bad little shooter. While it is rather simple in comparison to modern shooters, it does capture the charm of those classic shooters and did bring back a little nostalgia with its gameplay. Mechanically and performance wise I didn't really have any issues, bar a bit of a frame rate drop in the game's final level, and while I did find the enemy spawns to be a little frustrating, it was still quite an enjoyable experience while it lasted. When it comes to the audio and visuals, Monument does manage to capture the feel of a 90s shooter with its blocky environments, repeated textures and low poly enemy models, but the game's music does feel a little off. Each level is accompanied by metal music, which does fit with the gameplay more than some other genres of music would, but for me the game misses the mark with its soundtrack, and it really needed the digital grittiness that the likes of the classic Doom games had. So when it comes to my own personal rating of the game, I'm going to be giving Monument 3 out of 5 stars. While it's by no means the best retro themed shooter on the Switch, and its playtime does leave a lot to be desired, if you've got a few quid to burn and about an hour to spare, Monument is still worth a play, especially if you want to recapture a touch of that mid-90s FPS nostalgia. And so that's about it for this review of Monument on the Nintendo Switch. Make sure to hit that like button if it helped you out. Let me know your thoughts and opinions on the game and what your favourite retro shooters are on the Switch, and if you've not already done so, go ahead and subscribe to the channel as I upload new Switch game reviews and content every few days. For now though, I just want to thank you all once again for watching, and until next time, take care of yourselves and game on.